Hi, how are you doing? My name is Lee Bird. My husband and I own Cinco Puntos Press, and here we are at the American Library Association with Pat Mora and Claudia Guadalupe Martinez. And we are going to have a pan dulce, but guess what? We all forgot to bring pan dulce because we're busy. There's a lot of stuff going on over here. Anyway, we want to talk about two books. One is Pig Park, which is Claudia Martinez's second book, and it's actually set in Chicago, and she lives in Chicago now. She also wrote The Smell of Old Lady Perfume, which is set in El Paso, where she was born. Our second book from Pat Mora, and Pat Mora is the author of so many books, so many wonderful books. And this is Bravo Chico Canta Bravo, and she has it in an English version and in a Spanish version, and it's from Groundwood Press, who's a colleague of ours. So today, I would like to start by having Claudia talk just a little bit about Pig Park, and then the same with Pat. Claudia?
This is kind of different and new for me. I feel like I'm on iCarly.
Pretend you're on iCarly.
Yeah. So Pig Park is a book that I started to write when I moved to Chicago. Namely because I felt like the Chicago community is so different from my El Paso community. For one, the food is different, the people are different, the Spanish is different, and I just felt like it was kind of a way to honor, my children and like the future generation and how they're gonna grow up. And also, I was working for a community nonprofit, and that community nonprofit worked in the Mexican community with small businesses, and this was a way of talking about issues that were hitting that community pretty closely.
That's great. Pat, how did you decide to write Bravo Chico
Canta
It's
Bravo.
such a wonderful book, and you wrote it with your daughter.
Yes, I was
Tell
going to
us.
say I'm a substitute for my daughter.
Oh, okay.
So Libby Martinez is my older daughter,
Okay.
and she's a lawyer, and she got interested in writing children's books, and we decided to write. We've now written 2 books together,
Oh.
and it has been a great source of joy. We laugh ourselves senseless. And when we worked on Bravo Chico Canta Bravo, she got us both sweatshirts that say, I love Chico.
Oh.
Because Chico is a little mouse. He's the youngest of 12 mice. And he's always in trouble. And so we were always thinking, well, what is Chico going to do next?
It's a wonderful book. I can see you and your daughter laughing about
We
that.
laughed.
Yeah. Well, I had wanted to talk because I live in El Paso and I've lived there 35 years, and because you both were born there, I'm very interested in the voice that I think that you bring to your work, and whether you over time have thought that people understood that voice coming from a certain place or didn't notice. Something about the voice of El Paso that I noticed, a particular welcoming, generous voice. Also a little bit of a digging in heels voice, like a, hey, I'm here. I don't know. Do you want to comment about that?
I guess, I don't know if there's a voice. I know definitely when I hear somebody from El Paso speak, I know they're from El Paso. There's definitely something about the way that, that we talk and the language we choose that's very El Paso. So when I find that in El Paso and, somewhere other than El Paso, it's always very exciting. As far as, the voice, in writing, I think it's definitely there. I was tweeting about this event, and I was talking about how I grew up reading Pat's poetry. When I was, a kid in high school, I read Pat's poetry. I don't think that the library had any of your kids' books. But your poetry was definitely something that I ran across a lot and that I went back to. And I remember definitely feeling, this is El Paso. This is
home.
This is home, and just feeling like, I can be a writer too, because Pat's a writer, and writers can come out of El Paso. They don't just come out of New York or LA or Chicago or wherever.
Oh, she made my day.
Wow, she made my day
She
too.
made
That's
my
great.
day.
That's great.
That's wonderful.
Yeah.
Well, thank you, Claudia. I don't know if I mean, I lived in El Paso, probably 40 years. And I was born there. My mother was born there. My dad came from Chihuahua when he was 3. It was very much family home. My 3 children were born and raised there. They all went through high school there. I would say the desert is part of my writing, a big part of my writing.
Yes.
And the border, so in that sense, it's both, El Paso and border. When I meet people who are from El Paso, I don't hear it. No, I don't. Well, El Paso is very diverse.
It's very diverse.
It's very diverse. And like most cities in the United States today, I mean, we're a very diverse country. Our books don't yet show that diversity, and that's one of the things that Cinco Puntos Press has promoted, So, yay for you.
Yay, thank you. That's good. And Pat has been promoting over the years, 20 years now, the Dia de los Niños, Dia de los Libros, for kids to be reading, to honor kids reading, and to help kids read. So that's a wonderful promotion of books.
Well, and at the beginning we were focused on the Mexican celebration, which I'd never heard of before, 19 years ago, that of having a Day of the Child. And so we were very focused at the beginning on thinking about Latino children and making sure they were reading. But as DIA has grown, and 2016 will be our 20th anniversary, we really stress every day, all children, all languages, all cultures, all books. All good books.
All good books.
We want good books.
Well, I know that that Claudia and her family have been reading Bravo Chico because she said they had. So I wonder if you have any questions for Pat about that book.
I definitely do. I just want to say my daughter loves the book.
Oh, good.
Her favorite part is when they count and they line up and they count, and I think it secretly makes her wish she had like more brothers and sisters so that they could each count. And actually that's kind of how I grew up, with like 6 brothers and sisters, and we would all line up, and so that brought back a lot of really very fond memories, and I could definitely relate to that family, and kind of like the one kid who is like always getting in trouble like Chico, and who is very attached to his mother as well. So we just really loved it. And I wonder how this book ties into like some of the goals of DIA. I think for me when I read, I kept thinking DIA, because it's very much about like the diversity of language, and how you can do all kinds of wonderful things with that.
She gets a second hug. And we didn't even plan it. We didn't even plan it. Well, yeah, we really wanted, the mother in the book, Mrs. Canta, to be a woman who loves language, she loves music, and so in the book she speaks spider, and she speaks moth, and we wanted that sense of being not only bilingual but multilingual. And multilingual is such a big word. And so we put in the author note that, the parent or the teacher or the librarian could decide whether they wanted to use a word like multilingual. In the book, we use bilingual. So bravo, being bilingual is bravo. So we were, I think, probably unconsciously thinking about DIA.
Yes.
I love how the mom is, like you said, very... she's very cultured. She loves the theater, and then the father, he likes those costumes.
He likes to make costumes.
I love that. That's so different than what you'd expect. It definitely subverts some gender roles. So there's so much depth in the book, just on that it's unexpected and that you don't always find in a picture book.
Wow, she gets a third hug. My gosh,
she's scoring.
We could just do this all day. Yeah. Well, I'm trying to think, how did we decide? I did have a grandfather who was a tailor. And both my grandfathers, well, one died before I was born, but my father's father, I barely have a memory of him. And I can't remember, Libby will probably know, if we, in some ways, were thinking about my grandfather, But he is an atypical character in my books in that he's a very quiet man, you know, and I sort of love that about Mr. Kanta, that he's just busy making things and doing things, and Mrs. Kanta's the wild extrovert.
Yeah, she's getting everything done.
Well, I want to ask Claudia some questions.
Go for it.
So, I'm going to ask you the kind of questions that readers always ask authors. Is the story all fiction, or is it based on something that either happened to you or a story someone told you?
Well, you know, it's probably the most fiction I've ever written. I think usually I take a lot from my life with my books, with my first one, and with everything basically that I have in the works. It's very like personal, but this one was like an opportunity to kind of really go out there, you know, just because it is a book that's a little bit out there. It's just kind of like, you know, like one of the comments I get a lot is like, why do they believe that, you know, why do they buy into the pyramid so quickly, right? It's kind of out there. It's such an out there idea to build this pyramid. But the one grain of truth that's in it is that when I was working for this nonprofit, there was a man who actually came into our office and said, I want to build a giant pyramid in the middle of the park.
Oh my goodness.
And he wanted to do it for Day of the Dead. And it was going to be like a giant altar, and there's going to be candles, and he had this vision, and he was going from community nonprofit to community nonprofit trying to sell this idea of a pyramid. It actually never happened, but it was close to happening. I know that he had a few supporters who wanted it to happen, so it kind of comes from somewhere.
Is the main character as a personality type like you?
I don't think so. No, at least yes.
Well,
Please think so.
Well, I don't know, because you know yourself better than I do, but when I would read Masi, I would think, oh, that's Claudia. Just some of the attitudes. That was just real nice,
Yeah. No, it's just, I certainly recommend it strongly. I enjoyed it. And I thought one thing you did really well is in the most positive way, you layered information. So I learned not only is it a good plot, I enjoyed that, and suspense, I mean, it was very nicely paced, but also I was learning. I was learning about community action. I was learning about why it is that I love this one, because I love to cook, why bread gets hard.
Yeah.
So I thought there was a lot of information layered in the book.
Thank you.
Yes, yeah.
One of the interesting things I like about Claudia's book is that Masi decides that that boy, who she thinks is quite handsome, is not. Well, that's a spoiler, isn't it?
It's a spoiler.
Oh, I better
Forget
not.
She said it.
Masi has a lot of integrity in her decisions. That's what I want to say.
Yeah,
I think
but
that's
it's also a very nice book about young love.
I think so.
Isn't it?
Yep. Very nice.
Yeah, it's a little chased, right? Because nowadays, a lot of the books, the love goes very, you know, it's
too fast.
Yeah. So it's a little different like that. But, you know, I think that's true too. Maybe that's the little part that's me. I was kind of a late bloomer, and definitely like I didn't have a boyfriend till I was like 16. That was my first boyfriend, which kind of typical, like kind of what every Mexican mother hopes for, right? You know, while you're having like a boyfriend at 13 and, you know, and all that. So I was kind of like the good girl who, you know, kind of just, I would write poetry about love and the boys I like admired, but I never had a boyfriend till I was, you know, 16, and then, you know, I didn't have my first kiss till I was, you know, older.
Either of the boys in the book based on a boyfriend you had, that wouldn't be a spoiler.
No, that wouldn't be a spoiler.
No, you know, actually, I at the beginning, anyway, before some of the stuff that happens, some of the things I kind of based them on my husband.
Oh,
he's very handsome.
Does he know that?
No, I don't think he knows that. No, but I thought about him. Yeah, and because, you know, when I started writing the book, I was dating my husband. We weren't married, and so some of here or there, he's a little bit of my husband. Yeah.
Would he be flattered to know that?
I think he would. He's like, yeah, I told you I inspire you.
I want to ask a question about poetry. you didn't start, Pat, you didn't start writing children's books until you'd been a poet for quite a while, right?
Well, you know, when my three children were little and I would sit and read them, I love picture books. You know, I love picture books. And so we had our favorites. And I would think, well, I can do that. You know, that's the thing about picture books. It looks pretty easy.
Mm-hmm.
And so I sent them off, and I always joke, they zip back, you know, as if they were bills. I mean, they just zip back.
Yeah.
And so I got discouraged, as many people get discouraged. And I ended up having poetry accepted. And audiences find that ridiculous. How could it be that it was easier to get poetry published than a picture book? But it was.
Mm-hmm.
It was. And I love poetry dearly. I'm working on a 7th collection of poetry for adults right now, and another children's poetry book right now. But there's something about children's books. I always joke that it's like eating an M&M. Once you publish one, you're going to keep publishing children's books. I mean, they are irresistible.
Yeah, you know, I want to mention it. I was reading a poem of yours last night to prepare for this, and it's a poem by the title, I think, Fences, and it just hit so close. Like I don't think I really understood what it was about before, until now that now I'm a mother. You know, my child is a toddler, but now I'm there's so much, you know, depth there, and it completely went over me, you know, when I was.
Hug.
She's got hugs. That's great.
Well, you know, that was an interesting poem. That one goes back a while. It was a scene in Mexico. I was visiting Mexico, and I saw this, and then I saw a photograph years later. It's of a little girl, and she's kind of poking around some cactus, and that brought the poem together.
Yeah, that's amazing.
I love that poem.
Well, thank you.
You know, I do have another question. So, most of your picture books, they're all about human children, and this is an animal child. It's
Chico?
Yeah. So, you know, how did that choice come about?
Well, you know, the book is based on a legend or a fable that I had read many years ago in a book of Mexican American folk tales, and I had wanted to do it. You know, I thought it was such a great idea, and I think initially it's it is the way it is in the book. Maybe cats and dogs. So nobody seemed interested in folk tales for quite a while. And I would see books of Irish folk tales and Russian folk tales, but nothing really about Mexican or Latino folk tales. And then my good friend Patsy Aldana at Groundwood Books said to me, "Why is it you never send me a book?" And I said, "Well, I've sent you some and you've turned them back." I mean, she'd published other folk tales. And so she said, "Well, send me another one." And I said, "Well, I want to write it with my daughter." And she said, "Okay, that's fine." And so we started playing with the idea, and we didn't think people were going to capture what we wanted kids to get as much as two animals. And the other day in the Santa Fe comics section, there was a comic that showed these sort of mangy dogs, and the lead one goes up and says to the cat, "Meow," and the other dogs say to each other, "Wow, neat to be bilingual."
Oh.
So I sent that to my daughter, and I said, "There it is, there it is."
That's great. Yeah. Well, thank you, Pat and Mora, and thank you, Claudia Martinez. What a wonderful conversation. We're so happy that we could be here at ALA. We're so happy that you two could join us. Thank you so
Yeah,
much.
to be together again, and thank you, Lee, and thank
Yes.
you to Cinco Puntos Press.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And to Groundwood Press. Yep.
Yes.
All around.
Yes.
All around. Eat your pan dulce. Drink your coffee. Bye-bye.
And if anybody's
Bye-bye.
watching from El Paso,
yes.
bakery marranito for
Oh,
me.
yeah.
What do we say? Hola, Chuco. How do we say El Paso?
I
Oh.
can say that.
Yeah.
Sure.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye.
I should send you the book if your kids don't have it. Inspired by the Blue Ridge.
You know what, I was
The
trying to get
Daydream
it, but I couldn't find it.
Yeah, it's by Arte Publico Press.
Yeah. Like I saw.
I'll mail it to you. All right. Do I have your address?